Ooh, that's a hot top 10. What's up, beasties? Welcome back to the channel. It's Triple B, your friendly neighborhood bearded book beast. Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're having a great week and a great day. Today, I had to think about this a lot, but today this is going to be a very fun video. We're going to go through my top 10 books of all time, different genres, fantasy, sci-fi, thriller, mystery, urban fantasy, anything's on the table. And these were my top 10 reads of all time. Now, that means that it's not the top 10 that I think are the most influential, not the top 10 that I think are everyone's top 10, not the top 10 greatest of all time according to everyone. This is my top 10 books, which means a couple things. One, it means I have had to have read it. Two, it means that it affected me in some way that really stuck with me, and that I think about throughout my life. So there might be some books that are really awesome that everyone thinks are great and aren't on here. Maybe I didn't read them, or maybe I read them when I was younger and it just didn't stick, or I wasn't the mature reader I am now. But the good thing about that is there's probably gonna be some books on here you haven't heard of, and some books that you haven't seen on a top 10. So I know, as being a lover of BookTube, I have looked through comments and top 10 videos, and there's always people that say, oh, why didn't you put this on there? This list is terrible. That book sucks. And that's okay. If I get some of those, I get it. But again, this is my top 10 books I've read of all time, not what I think for the masses is the top 10, obviously. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. Thanks for being here. If you haven't yet, as always, like and subscribe. Helps the channel grow. Also, be sure to leave me a comment down in the comments section. And check out in the description, I've got all my links in there for social media, my wish list, email address, all that kind of stuff is down in there if you want to check that out. And also, there's no chapter breaks in the bar underneath the video, but in the description, there are chapter breaks if you want to hop around or anything like that. So without further ado, let's get into it. My top 10 books of all time. All right, let's get started with honorable mentions, because any top 10 list, of course, has to have honorable mentions. Side note about top 10 lists, I know they are the brunt of a lot of jokes with BookTube right now because everyone does them, but get used to them because I'm going to do some more. I'm going to have a yearly top 10 books of all times. I want to do top 10 graphic novels, top 10 mangas, and then top 10 books of the year, top 10 books in this series, top 10 ranking of characters, and like all that kind of stuff. They're just fun to do, and I know a lot of you like them. Some of you may not, and that's okay. But that's not all I'll do, obviously. But there will be some of that on the channel, so yeah, just hope you enjoy them. But anyway, of course, with any top 10, there's ones that are real close, and then you decide to leave them out, and you have to make them an honorable mention. So I do have 3 honorable mentions I'll talk about first. First one is Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson. I actually just read this last year, I believe, and it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I loved getting into this. I finished the trilogy, working through Warbreaker on an audiobook right now when I'm driving and doing chores and stuff like that because, like I said before, I want to get through Stormlight Archive before the new book comes out in December. So I'm going to be reading one of those every month once I get through Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff. Then I'm going to start into Stormlight Archive and read a book every month or two and get ready for that new one in December. But this was an awesome book. Loved the world building, loved the characters. Really just continued this resurgence and spark of love of fantasy for me. And it was really awesome. Really enjoyed it. Brando Sando is the man, and Yeah, his, like people say, his prose is just so approachable. You can just get into it. The world is awesome. He's really good with characters, and um, his prose, like people say, it's simple and digestible. But he does write some pretty sentences here and there, and his internal dialogues and stuff with characters is really good. So I love this trilogy. I can't wait to get into Mistborn Air 2, but I got to get into Stormlight first, which I'm even more excited for. So, yeah, I'm just really enjoying the Cosmere, and this was the one that kicked off the love for that world, and I can't wait to dive more into it. Great book. Now, the other two, this is when things are going to get crazy. So, these two are ones that you'll find a lot on people's top 10 lists. So, when everyone sees these on my honorable mentions, they're going to be like, what the heck? This list is garbage. Or maybe you'll be like, ooh, those two aren't on the list. I can't wait to see what it is. So, first one, honorable mention. And these two just missed the cut, but the first one is Dune by Frank Herbert. I know. But I mean, this is a gorgeous special edition. But I do plan to reread this and then read through the sequel books because I've never read the sequel books, but I did read this. But it was a long time ago. I was young, um, in high school. I was not the reader I am now, and I loved the story and the characters, but some of it was probably over my head. I was probably impatient and didn't really soak it up like I should have. But I love the movies, the ones that came out, and I know that this is an awesome uh, book, and I do think that it's well written. The characters are awesome. The world is awesome. But like I said, this is a top 10 list of books that really I loved and I've always remembered and thought of since I've read them, some new, some old. Um, and this one, I think, uh, because I love the movies and because everyone talks about how great this book is, I wanted to put it on the list, but I had to be true and be authentic. And, when I read it, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't one that I thought, oh, that's the best book I've ever read. But I do want to reread it because I think now I might think differently. And in next year's top 10 books of all time update, who knows, maybe it'll be in there. But I am looking forward to rereading it and then reading the sequels before more movies come out. So, yeah, honorable mention, awesome book, game changer in the genre, but it is on my honorable mention. Just missed being in the top 10. And the other one, this one's going to get a lot of, yeah, this one's going to get a lot of flag too. But Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. Tolkien is awesome. Lord of the Rings is awesome. I love the movies. I have them, obviously, all the different sets. Um, and I like the books. I read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings when I was young. Same thing. I probably was impatient. I probably skimmed through things. And then once the movies came out, I loved those and I've rewatched them so many times. But I do have this awesome edition, and along with the up there, oh, actually, it's up on the top shelf. You probably can't see it, but the Silmarillion. I've never read that. Want to read that, and cool edition of The Hobbit. Um, but yeah, I love this world, love these characters, and it's just, I mean, it's the most important probably fantasy book of all time. Really just changed the genre and kind of gave us all these great characters and stories we love nowadays. This was a big influence on it, obviously, and I think it's great. And I do want to reread it. And I have, since I got this edition, I have kind of read it here and there, just when I want to check in and feel like doing something different, reading a classic, and it's really good. So same as Dune, I probably, if I reread it now as a more mature reader and took my time, I would probably be way up on the list. Um, so maybe it will someday, but again, this is my top 10 books um, based on my enjoyment of them. And when I read this, I was young and I liked it. I loved the characters in the story and I thought it was really cool. But again, it wasn't something where I like, oh man, that was the best book I've ever read. And I probably skimmed and skipped things just to get through it. And I know. So it is on my to reread list for sure. But awesome book, very important to our genre and to into fantasy sci-fi world, movies, shows, and books. So this is a heavy hitter, but it's just outside my top 10 in the honorable mentions. All right, now here we go. Let's get to the actual top 10. Uh, Here we go. I'm excited. So, number 10. This is a book that I don't hear a lot about, but it is a pretty awesome series, and it is called X Heroes by Peter Clines. This is the first book in the X Heroes series, um, and it is basically Avengers meets The Walking Dead. Uh, and I remember when I read this book, I flew through it, and it just encap like captured my attention, and I was just engrossed in it. And I think that it's the prose is a lot like you could say like Sanderson, very digestible, very approachable. But the character work in this is so good. And I love superheroes. I love zombies. You mix the two together, it was awesome. It was really good. Basically, it's this group of superheroes who the world's been taken over by zombies, and they are kind of in this it's like in this kind of like a movie studio type city area, and they have it blocked off from the zombies, which they call them X's, that they can't get in, and they're trying to help all these humans and people survive. So it's really good. It's an awesome story. The superhero characters are all really cool. It goes through kind of their backstories, a lot of times how they got their powers or what happened in their life, where they were doing when the zombie outbreak happened. And then there's also humans that are supporting characters in it too. And it's just a really cool look at character work in it, looking at what um, humans versus these superheroes do in a post-apocalyptic world like that with zombies, and how they work together. And yeah, it's really good. Um, if you have not checked it out, I would definitely check it out. I think there's about 5 books in the series, and it's finished. But it's an excellent series, and this is an awesome start to it. Um, I still need to finish the series. um, I think I got through the first 3 books. It's what it was in. I started it, and then it was in that stretch. I had a good 10 years or more where I didn't read anything, um, except for a couple long series that I was reading, and those were mostly urban fantasy. And I missed a lot of stuff. And then this was one of the ones that I read in that time outside of those series that I really loved. But just reading was a slow go for me for that long stretch. So excited to wrap up this series eventually too. And they're shorter books, and they read really quick. But they're really good. Excellent. One of my favorite books of all time. And these new covers they redid are amazing. Um, that right there is the dragon, um, which he has a different name in the series now. He's kind of switched up his superhero name and costume and stuff, but sweet. There's a X down there and Ravage City in the background. Just awesome. Love this series. Love this book, and love these new covers. All right, number 9 is Redwall by Brian Jacques. This is the start of the Redwall series. Um, it was between this one and Salamanstron, which is later on in the series. Salamanstron was the first book that made me cry. I was in middle school when I read that one. Maybe, yeah, I think I was in middle school. But this was the first book, and when I thought about the Redwall series, one of my favorite series as a kid and of all time, I thought, which one would I say is the best one out of that really affected me the most? And it would just have to be the first book, because it's the one that got me into fantasy and really sparked that love of reading and getting into a world and all that stuff. And just the story is really good. The main character, Matthias here, he is kind of he's a big dreamer, loves reading about the heroes of old, like Martin the Warrior, who's got a statue at the Abbey, the Redwall Abbey where he lives. And he really wants to be an adventurer and a warrior, but he's just a young, kind of fumbling, shy mouse. But of course, he becomes a hero. So, yeah, it's just a really great story about him stepping out of that to go against these evil rats and vermin that come to try to take over the peaceful abbey. Um, and it's really great character work. Um, just brutal wars and death and really sad stuff, but also a lot of hope and good things and um, characters sacrificing lots for each other and for the future of this peaceful red wall. And sometimes the ultimate sacrifice. But Matthias is a great character, has a great villains in it. And if you've never read What Redwall, you definitely should. And this is where you would start. Awesome, awesome book. Number 8 is going to be a book in the Orphan X series by Greg Hurwitz called Hellbent, which this cover is sweet. Also, I love this cover. Um, it's one of the only ones that has a really different look from the others. The other ones all kind of look similar, but I love this cover. But this one is my favorite book in the whole series, because I won't get into too much because spoilers. Obviously, this is I think it's the third book in the series. But this is one where things really pick up with the overarching story. Um, Instead of just being kind of like a case of the week, with a little bit of the story continuing. This is really when everything just kind of really starts to take off. And Evan Smoke, the main character, uh, who is the nowhere man, a very realistic, like vigilante Batman character. He doesn't have a costume, obviously, but helps people, stays off the grid, has an alias, alter ego, um, and you could say this one is my favorite because in this one it's when Batman meets his Robin. But it's very cool, very awesome book. I really enjoyed it. If you haven't read the series, you definitely should. Um, just very digestible, quick, fast paced, lots of action, but also really great character work. Uh, just awesome stuff. This is an awesome series. All right, number 7 is going to be Howling Dark by Christopher Rocchio. Just read this not that long ago, and I know recency bias can be a thing, but I mean, I finished it up um, in the last month, and I'm excited to get into Demon White. But I just love this series so far. I've read 2 books, 2 novellas, and a short story collection, and this is my favorite so far. And there might be a different Christopher Rocchio book on here. I'm getting ready to get into Demon White, which people say is the best. People really love the most recent book, Disquiet Gods, Ashes of Man. People like that one, Kingdoms of Death. We'll see. I don't know, but I'm excited about the series. And this one, I really loved his book too. So again, can't get into spoilers too much. And I really loved Empire of Silence, but it was definitely a lot of setup in that book. Um, Beautiful prose, but a lot of times there wasn't a lot of action. It was a lot of getting to know the character and learning about his life and his childhood and how he got kind of setting him up to get into the the journey of the actual story. And this one just, I mean, it starts off with a little bit of that still, but still it gets into the action pretty quick, and then just, oh, it's so good. Um, just a lot of the stuff with the Cielsons, and I mean, this book has everything. It's got action, it's got some horror, um, fantasy, sci-fi, world building. It stretches the world out even more. Great character work, and it's amazing that it's first person from Hadrian Marlowe, but there's just, you get so much and learn so much about the other characters and can feel their personalities come through, and you, even though you're not in their head, you still get to know them so well. And I think that just shows how good of a writer Christopher is, that he's able to do that. And this was just amazing. I loved it. It's a great book, um, and I can't wait to continue with the series. All right, number 6. This is one that I read a long time ago, um, but it's part of the Repairman Jack series by F. Paul Wilson, one of my favorite series of all time. And this book just wrecked me. I remember when it came out, I had the day off, and I think it was when I was working. I was in school and working night shift, and I didn't have to work the next night. So normally when I would get out of work, I would go home, go to sleep, sleep all day. But I actually went to the bookstore. This had just come out, or maybe I got it at the library. I can't remember. But either way, it just came out, and I was able to get it that day. I got it that morning, went home, laid in bed, started reading it, thought I'd read it a little, then go to sleep. I ended up laying in bed all day and I read it. That's the only time I've started a book in the morning and read it and finished it that night. Like that's how good it was, and it just I felt emotionally just wrecked and drained afterwards. It's such a good book, but that is Harbingers. Gosh, I always want to say Harbinger. Harbingers, um, Repairman Jack by F. Paul Wilson. Oh, this book is so good. It's further along in the series, so I can't get into it too much, but just um, F. Paul Wilson puts his character through the ringer in this book. It's a great story as always. It's very exciting, but then just some of the things that happen to him that he goes through, it's just like and the ending. Ugh. But a lot like how Changes was for Dresden Files was such a turning point in the series. This one was one for um, Repairman Jack, and it just goes to a dark place. And yeah, it's really good. If you haven't read this series, definitely check it out. And then when you get to Harbingers, let's talk because you'll need it. This was a great book. All right, we're getting into the top five. Here we go. Number five, Changes by Jim Butcher. The most talked about book in the Harry Dresden series, Dresden Files. This book was amazing. I mean, from the first line, it just pulls you in. You know. Um, and it's just, it's so good. There's so many twists, plot twists and turns and surprises, and things that just floor you and break your heart and make you cheer, make you cry. And always with Dresden Files, they make you laugh. But this is just an amazing book. One of my favorites of all time. And just a really good, just a great story, and a turning point in the Dresden Files long series that kind of shifts gears and changes things and changes characters. And um, yeah, it's really good. If you have not read this yet, you're missing out. Get into the Dresden Files, and then when you get to this one, again, let's talk because you're going to need it. So a lot of these books on here might make you need to talk. Um, but it's excellent, excellent. So good. Really good stuff. All right. Number four is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. I love this book, and I'm loving Empire of the Damned. Love this series. Jay Kristoff. Oh man, I also have his Nevernight trilogy. I haven't not read that yet. I have his what's it called? The Illuminati Files series. I have his young adult series, Lifelike, I think, because I just loved this book so much. I went and thrifting and on Pango and found like any book I could by him. Um, I think even have another one called Storm Dancer or something, but this book floored me. It was so good. Really long book, but I just flew through it. Gabriel De Leon is one of my favorite characters. Um, I love the world in this. I love his prose. It's so beautiful, but he also writes action so well and character dialogue and internalization so well. Um, Again, it's such an interesting way the story's told, where Gabriel is captured by these vampires, and he's being interviewed by one, and he's telling his story. So it goes from third person to first person, and it's just done so well. It's seamless, and it's just an incredible, incredible book. Um, it's got so many like just dark. It's such a dark, terrible world. So many horrible things happen, but at the same time, he finds a way to just make you laugh and make you love these characters and have hope. Then he'll snatch it away, and you feel so down, but it's so good. You keep going and you get back to that hope. And there's always this humor. Um, and it's just, oh, it's so good. An amazing, amazing book. And, yeah, he's a great author, and I can't wait for even more to finish Empire of the Dam, but then to continue on with the series. He's doing something special with the series, and this book starts it off. And if you haven't read it or been thinking about picking it up, you definitely should. This was number 4 on my top 10 books of all time. Number 3 comes from the A Song of Ice and Fire series, one of my favorite series. And when I was trying to decide which one it would be, I don't know if you can see the top already, but um, of course it was between Storm of Swords for me and Game of Thrones, the first book. And Storm of Swords is awesome, obviously, and it's well known by everyone. It's on a lot of lists as the best book in the series. But I had to think about for my top books, my top 10, which one uh, really affected me the most and stuck with me the most, and it would have to be the first book, Game of Thrones, by George R. R. Martin. That is my number 3 book. Um, and it is just awesome. Nothing beats. For me, this first book was it that sucked me in. Um, when I first got to meet all the characters, learn about them, see them all together, see them all interact, because a lot of them don't make it through, But just getting dropped into this world and for the first time and learning more about it, following along with the story, his writing, and getting to know the characters. Like, it's just a special experience. If you haven't started Game of Thrones somehow, and if you haven't seen the show and or read the books, like, you are lucky. Read the books first, then watch the show. Um, but yeah, this is amazing. I hope we get that Winds of Winter at some point because this was an incredible series, and this is where it all started. It's my number 3 book of all time. Number 2 is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown, the most previous entry in the Red Rising saga. This book was incredible, awesome character work. Again, I love. Some people say his prose isn't the best. I think it's gorgeous. I love his prose. I think he does a great job with dialogue and character work and character building, world building, especially as the series has gone on. Every book has just gotten better and better and better and better. And you've seen more of the world and more. And he's so good at like twists and pulling the rugs out from under you, and making you hate a character, then love them, and back and forth. And it's just, he's a great author. And this series is amazing. And this was my favorite book. Um, just some heart wrenching things in here again that happen that'll make you need to maybe chat with me after you read it if you haven't got to this point yet. But no spoilers, of course. But man, just what a series, and this book is incredible. Number 2 for me, Lightbringer, and number 1, of course, it's gonna be from my favorite series of all time, which is The First Law World by Joe Abercrombie. And I had to decide which book was the best, and a lot like the Red Rising series, his books have just gotten better and better. I love the First Law trilogy, the opening trilogy. Um, I loved all those characters so much, so I almost chose Before They Are Hanged as my top book of all time. If I made the series and let there be more than one author, that's kind of, I should have said that earlier, but I like to just pick one book from a series so that it wouldn't just be a bunch of Red Rising and First Law books or something like that. Um, but yeah, I decided in the end I also loved the standalone books. Where we'll talk about it eventually. They're not really standalones. I technically could, but if you just read those or without reading the first trilogy, you're missing out a lot of the context and background on characters, and they won't mean as much. And if you skip them and just go from the first trilogy to the second, The Age of Madness, you're gonna miss out on a lot of context and character work too, and arcs. It's best to just read them all the way through. Think of it as book 1 through 9. I know saying that read 1 through 9 doesn't make people want to start a series because it's long, but think of it as 3 different trilogies set in the same world, and they build off each other and are connected, and it tells the full story. and that way it's the best way to experience the first law world. But I went with a book from the second trilogy, technically the third, if you listen to what I say, the Age of Madness trilogy, and it was The Wisdom of Crowds, the final book of the Age of Madness trilogy, and the final ninth book of Joe Abercrombie's First Law World, at least for now. But this book was really good. I enjoyed it a lot. His prose, I think, is amazing. I love his humor. I love just the dark gray characters that he somehow makes you love, no matter what. And this trilogy was incredible. I loved the first trilogy, loved the middle trilogy, but this trilogy was my favorite. Even though some of my favorite characters are in the first trilogy, I still love the characters in this one. Orso is my favorite. But yeah, this is a great story. It caps the second trilogy and all 9 books so well, and leaves a little opening for maybe him to return to the world eventually. But so many twists and turns, and great character work, great everything. But it does rip your heart out again at times, and we might need to chat after you finish up this book. So, but Wisdom of Crowds is my #1 book of all time. I loved it, and you will too if you read the series. All right, so that was my top 10 books of all time that I have read. I hope you enjoyed it. Please go ahead and leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of all these books. If you've read them, let me know what your top 10 would be, or let me know what your top 1 would be, or any combination of those, or just say hello, because I'd love to talk to you. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. That helps the channel. Also, feel free to reach out to me on social media. You can find all that info in the description. But until I see you in the next video, have a great day. But be brave, be beautiful to one another, and be beastly. We'll see you.